Hello and welcome to the programme. Well, a day after pulling the US out of the Iran nuclear deal, President Trump has fired off a new threat. He's warning that there will be severe consequences if Tehran restarts its nuclear programme.
I would advise Iran not to start their nuclear program. I would advise them very strongly. If they do, there will be very severe consequence.
Well, Donald Trump called the deal defective at its core when he pulled out last night. Reaction and fallout was swift. Europe's leaders insist that the deal is still alive. But Iran's supreme leader says it'll abandon it too if trade relations aren't guaranteed. Here he is, speaking earlier.
If you can get a guarantee in which we can place our confidence, then you can continue. If you do not succeed in obtaining a definitive guarantee, and I really doubt that you can, that is the point from which we cannot continue.
And reaction inside the Iranian parliament has been pretty robust. Let's take a look. Politicians shouting death to America, setting the US flag on fire. They're also burning a piece of paper which they say represents that nuclear deal. Well, the UK, France, China, Russia and Germany, they were the other signatories of that deal that was brokered back in 2015. Their message, the deal is not dead. Britain today said that it had no intention of walking away. Here's the British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson speaking to the British Parliament.
Britain has no intention of walking away. Instead, we will cooperate with the other parties to ensure that while Iran continues to restrict its nuclear program, then its people will benefit from sanctions relief in accordance with the central bargain of the deal. I cannot yet go into detail on the steps we propose to take, but I hope to make them available as soon as possible. And I spoke yesterday to my French and German counterparts.
Well, the US is reportedly threatening sanctions on European and American companies who do business in Iran. Germany is one of Tehran's largest partners. Here's their foreign minister speaking today.
Our aim is clear. We remain committed to this nuclear deal, not only for our own interest. That's why we will be working on this deal to have a future.
Now, the world's nuclear energy watchdog says that the current deal is binding, and they say that the AIE, it can confirm that the nuclear-related commitments are being implemented by Iran. But America's allies, Israel and Saudi Arabia, have long opposed this deal. They're also both sworn enemies of Tehran and of each other. Let's take a look at this article, which was written on Saudi's English newspaper, Arab News. And it's defending Donald Trump's decision. The kingdom has been fighting Iran in a proxy war in Yemen for 3 years now. Back in Washington, the message is pretty clear. The US president made the right decision. Here's his national security advisor speaking on CBS a little earlier.
Yeah, I don't think it will bring us closer. I think Iran is bringing us closer to war with its belligerent activity in Iraq and Syria. You know, they've been moving missiles. The Revolutionary Guard's Quds Force has been moving missiles into Syria that can hit any target inside Israel. That's why we've seen recent Israeli strikes. It's that aggressive militaristic behavior by Iran on the ground in the region that's the real threat.
John Bolton there. Let's cross over to Washington. Barbara Plett-Usher joins us now, monitoring all of this for us. Barbara, the axis of adults have been removed. We've got people like John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, real Iran hawks. No surprise, really, that we are where we are then.
Well, we know it's something that President Trump had wanted to do for quite a long time. He'd made that campaign promise, and he'd wanted to fulfill it. And he was admonished by his administration, as you said, over the past year, not to do so, not least because it would create rifts with America's allies and create this uncertainty in the Middle East when the last thing they need there is a potential for conflict. But you're right, his national security team has changed in the past month or so, and he now has advising him John Bolton, Bolton, who you just heard there, his national security advisor, and also Mike Pompeo, his Secretary of State, both of whom have been very hawkish on Iran in the past, both of whom have been very critical of the deal. And certainly Mr. Bolton has openly advocated regime change in the past. So I think at the very least they will have reinforced Mr. Trump's instincts.
And ongoing concerns that we are still yet to see this plan B. What will happen next?
Well, I don't think there is a plan B as far as we're aware. Mr. Trump was speaking today before his cabinet meeting, and he was talking about saying that there would be consequences if Iran restarted its nuclear program. But he hasn't actually laid out a strategy for how he wants to prevent that, other than scrapping the accord and reimposing sanctions. And he said that they would be the strongest sanctions ever. So it's not entirely clear if he was referring to the old sanctions being snapped back or if there would be new ones as well. But that seems to be the plan, which brings us to where we were in 2012, before the agreement was began to be negotiated. And if Mr. Trump and his administration believe that strong sanctions will now force Iran to come back to the table and renegotiate a deal that the U.S. feels is on better terms, then that could be quite an aggressive or a controversial approach if it's played out over the next months, and could lead to more confrontation. So. That's what everybody in Washington is wondering now. What's the next step? That hasn't been completely articulated.
Okay, Barbara, as always, thank you very much. Barbara Plitt, Usher there in Washington, our Washington bureau. Now.